The Good Place is back for its final season. We're getting this, as usual, one day after NBC broadcast it on Fridays on Netflix. This is the fourth and final season of the Mike Schur created comedy that I made in the old incarnation of the show. Gary and Matt watch all of, and Matt's kind of kept up, but is not a sort of big Good Place fan as I am. And this series starts with Eleanor as the architect after the judge, played by Maya Rudolph, says that they can have one more experiment to prove that humans are generally good and that they will be allowed into the Good Place. And at the end of the last season, we saw Chidi, one of the original experimenters, get his memory wiped so that he would have no knowledge of Simone, played by Kirby Howell-Baptiste, going in there. So the Good Place and the Bad Place working together in this first episode of Series 4 to find out whether they can make humans truly good.
Well, they're not working together.
Well, they can't. Well, yeah, they can kind of competing. Yeah, it's a better phrase. And I wish I'd said it. You know,
they're competing against each other to see which one of them is right.
Yes, and who will eventually, if at all, get the keys to the Good Place. So we know this is the final series. We know that they've got the end game in mind. What did you think?
Was it just a 20-minute episode?
Yeah, that was my first. That was my first disappointment.
Because normally because this is part one, and normally they would release a 40-minute, wouldn't they? So I don't understand.
Maybe because it's the final season, they're trying to eke as much out of it.
But it feels like we've only got sort of half the story, really. But yeah, they introduced the other characters who are going to be part of this experiment. You know, as you say, you had Simone and this this journalist who was very critical of Tahani. This episode introduces this sort of like douchebag character who's going to wind Eleanor up, and now Eleanor is pretending to be an architect alongside Michael. And the fourth character then originally is revealed to be this Norwegian woman who's just very bemused by the entire situation.
Blasé about everything. Doesn't care.
And there is a reveal at the end, which I don't think we should spoil. That sort of changes things and brings in the brilliant Maya Rudolph for a little bit of a guest spot.
And she's just started Deadwood.
Yeah, and she needs her fix of Timothy Oliphant. And describes Chidi as an absolute snack, which is a line I liked. And also, you know, you've got Mindy in this episode, and what's the name of the male, the Janet's guy, Derek, who's very funny. You know, there are a lot of funny elements, but I don't know. There's bits of it I find a bit.
Yeah, has it really? If you're honest,
it's sort of I really like that first season, but I think it feels like a law of diminishing returns.
That is your favourite phrase, isn't it? I love it when you say it. It always annoys me when you say it, because I know you didn't enjoy it.
In season 3, there were bits that I really enjoyed. You know, there was the Janet's episode, there was the episode with Michael McKean, there was the episode with Eleanor's mum. You know, I think the thing is, I really like Ted Danson and Christine Bell and their dynamic and things like that, but the other and Darcy Carden as Janet, but the other three characters I really struggle with. For a bit, it seemed to be going around in circles. I do like the writing and the concept, and I'm intrigued to see how it ends, so I will be watching. But I think those other characters just don't work for me, Jason and Tahani in particular, and Chidi. And I don't buy into the Chidi-Eleanor romance, which I think you need to.
I would agree with that.
And you have to buy into that relationship to feel the pain of Eleanor. You know, now Chidi's had his memory wiped and doesn't know who she is, that she's got this longing for him. And I don't think they had good chemistry, the two of them, to believe that. And that's why that final episode really didn't work for me. I'm going to keep watching. That relationship between Michael and Eleanor, I think, is the best thing that they've got going. And also, you know, the performances from, like, you know, the demons and things like that, the Darcy Carden's performance as Bad Janet and things like that. And
did you like the elephant made it feel light?
Yes.
This is Janet. If you want anything at all, Janet can bring it to you. Watch. Janet, can I have a baby elephant made of pure light that tells you true secrets about the universe?
Shirley Temple killed JFK.
See? Anything you want from Janet?
Can I have a peppermint?
Sure.
I'm going to go over there now.
Stonehenge was a sex thing.
See, there are good lines in it, but I think it's the characters that let it down for me.
I am glad that it's going out on its own terms, that it's not a ton of episodes, that it's going to get a proper ending.
Like Glow will be as well.
Yeah, it's going to get a proper ending, which they've now shot and envisioned, and everyone that's in it has said it's a good ending. I mean, we'll be the judges of that, hence our job here, but I think, it probably will be
surely Maya Rudolph will be she plays the judge.
And I have no idea where it's going to go. I can't say that this is predictable.
That's the good thing about The Good Place, is you don't know where it's going to go, and sometimes that's to its detriment. Sometimes that's, that first season, that was the big shock, and that was one of the best sort of, cliffhanger reveals, whatever you want to call it, that TV has produced over the last few years.
Yeah, I would agree.
I am going to continue watching it, but I'm not as big I haven't latched onto it in a way that you have.
I can see that, and I appreciate it.
Why do you think you latched onto it as much as you did?
Because it keeps surprising me, and because it keeps reinventing itself, and because I really like Kristen Bell, Ted Danson together, same as you. It's a half hour.
You didn't feel like it went round in circles for a bit, and bits are weaker than others, and things like that. You didn't feel that.
Not really, because it's always heading somewhere I don't expect. And like you say, that Michael McKean episode was really standout. I mean, if you're asking, do I remember all the seasons in great detail? No. But it's a clever show that I can't second guess. And I like it for that, and I appreciate it for that. That's every Friday on Netflix. Let's finish on what I hope will be a fairly positive note with The Good Place. A bit of history if you've never listened to the podcast before. I saw the first season when it went out on NBC in the US, and when I heard that it was coming to Netflix, I asked Matt and Gary to watch it all to the end, which unfortunately meant that they knew something was happening at the end, because otherwise why would I ask them to watch it to the very end of the first season? But they did. They've all kept up with it, which is very rare that all three of us will eventually keep up with something all the way through. So we're now 4 seasons into The Good Place, the show created by Mike Schur about the afterlife and the 4 humans inside it. Chidi Adagonye, Jamil in there as Tahani, and Jason and Kristen Bell playing...
You started that so well.
I know I did. I feel like my brain melted.
Eleanor, Chidi, Tahani, and Jason.
Thank you.
I even know Eleanor's surname. Is it Eleanor Footstrap or something?
Shellstrap.
That's it.
You're so obsessed with feet. You're so obsessed with feet. So obsessed. I want to talk briefly, because I'd like Gary's view, and I don't think Matt and I discussed it on the podcast, but the penultimate episode saw the 4 get into the Good Place, Michael become a Good Place architect, and then all the original Good Place architects leaving him in charge of the afterlife, the Good Place afterlife, and the 4 discovering that everyone within this Good Place that they've been aspiring to get to throughout the whole series is actually really depressed, and even though they're surrounded by everything they could ever want, and they're in this paradise, because once you've done everything that you could possibly think of, you're there for eternity. And it was a really well constructed, and I was ill, and maybe I made me more emotional, but I teared up at the moment where Michael announces that they've created a door where, when they want to, they can leave the Good Place and end their existence. There's no rules on when they can go, just when they feel they've completed their time, they can walk through the door and basically die. I wanted your opinions on the penultimate episode first, Gary, and whether that moved you, what you thought of Lisa Kudrow popping up. Did you enjoy that penultimate episode going into this finale?
I did. I mean, I think that the second to last, the penultimate episode was still good in the sense that it still had some comedy in it. It still had some surprises. Twists, I'm not sure that you would call Lisa Kudrow playing a Greek philosopher a twist, but, the fact that he gets made the sort of, the god character, as it were, of The Good Place, I suppose, was an interesting one. I did enjoy it, yes.
So now we go into the finale, and this saw them all in the Good Place. everything was fine with the world. They all knew that they could go through that door whenever they wanted. It dawned on me slowly that what we were going to get was a slow burn of them exiting the good place and going slowly through that door with Janet's guidance one by one. What did you think, Matt, of the structure of this and the way they dealt with everybody going on to their final destination, as it were?
It all felt very sort of believable, didn't it? I think the order that it happened, the way that sort of Tahani decided against it and decided to become an architect instead. Eleanor sort of desperately trying to get Chidi to stay and then trying to find her own purpose, before she left. It reminded me of, and sort of similar, the very end of 6 Feet Under.
Yeah.
But sort of strung out over 40 minutes rather than a 5-minute ending sequence.
Yeah.
And you still had the humour in there. You still had. I mean, I've loved Maya Rudolph in this last series.
She's been brilliant.
Yeah.
Without her, it would have been a bit of a slog for me. I found this series in particular a little bit unpredictable in terms of quality of episodes. There's been some really good ones, like the Chidi one was really good, and as you say, the penultimate episode in this. But with Maya Rudolph has added, and the guy who plays Sean as well. I think having him quite as a prominent character here as well, and I think they wrapped up everything well. Having Michael become a human finally, and the plot strand of him trying to learn guitar and then being taught to by his actual wife. Mary Virgin.
Yeah, I like that.
The cameo there at the end. Old Nick Offerman turning up as well briefly as a chair maker.
Well, as potentially himself.
I assume that
I've
because
read on several places.
If they went for Ron, I think they'd have put the moustache on so that we knew it was Ron.
Yeah,
that was my thinking. So it must be him.
Yeah, I mean, if I was to be critical, maybe it was a little bit long. It could have maybe cut 5 minutes and still had the same impact. But yeah, no, I enjoyed this is what would happen, I think. Now they've given the people in the good place that option to leave and that sort of sense of fulfillment. And
it's a very poignant show, actually. I don't think the show has dealt with end of life with this particular level of positivity.
Not since the beginning of the series, I think, if they focus so much on it. I feel like there were two characters that particularly deserve a lot of praise for this last episode. Yeah. Jason, I think, for a character that was very one-dimensional throughout the whole of the 4 series, suddenly you got a huge amount of respect for in this last episode as a character. I think the actor's been great because basically he's just a goofball player. He comes up with the stupid lines and in this last episode. And I think the only thing I would say, I really, really felt like they should have done a Blake Bortles cameo throughout any point of the series.
That would have been amazing.
It would have, and I know that the problem was that Blake Bortles in real life lost his job as the starting quarterback of the Jacksonville Jaguars, and he's now not even in football. So it was a little, maybe it was a bit difficult to try and get hold of him.
Yeah,
but it really would have done the end of him would have been meeting Blake Bortles.
That would have been a great way. Well, I've done everything I wanted to do.
Yeah, I've done everything, and I've met Blake Bortles. But
yeah.
And I think the other thing, and it's really only a small thing, but we've talked about how the actress that plays Janet has been so good.
Darcy
She's
Carter.
amazing.
That last part in each of their characters where she said, "You can sit here on this bench for as long as you like," it got me, and I don't
me too.
know
I'm
why.
weird. I know.
It got me. It was like a death sequence of someone saying to you, "Look, you haven't got to do this yet. You've got, there's your door." And it really got me, and it was amazingly for a comedy. Again, there was like a Blackadder goes forth moment of real closure and real empathy that I had.
Very poignant. I think what they've done is they've made End of Life quite positive, and they've looked at it really effectively. It's made me think differently about things. It talks about how you can have everything perfect, but time is infinite, and we've all got to go through this at some point. It's a very clever and ambitious thing for any show to do, let alone a half-hour comedy. And I think what else they did well in these final 3-4 episodes is the only thing that I ever had an issue with or a problem with about The Good Place was I never bought into Eleanor and Chidi's relationship. I think since they reset him and they showed you his childhood like they did I finally understood him as a character. I finally understood their bond, and by the time I got to the finale, I was like, I believe in you, I care about you, and you are a genuine couple. And for them to manage to do that in 4 episodes is really commendable, and I think it is...
Only slight nitpick I have would be that for the Tahani character, who throughout the whole series has been this name dropper, I didn't feel like her change of heart was quite, or this kind of like, I liked the bit where she said, I'll make tea, I'll do anything, but I just didn't quite feel like that rounded off her character. I felt like she should have got her moment where she'd met all the people, the famous people, and now it's time for her to go. I don't know. And again, it's a nitpick.
The reconciliation with her parents, I thought, was well done. I thought
that was sort of her thing, wasn't it? The relationship with her parents,
the acceptance from them. Yeah,
but then I would have said for her character, let her go through the door. I didn't feel she needed to have the bit where she became an engineer.
How do we feel about the series as a whole? It's still one of my favourite shows, and I've been defending it for people.
I know. I think it's a very inconsistent show. I think it has flashes of brilliant. I mean, that first season was really good, but I think since then, because of the structure, and I think the characters as well haven't been as fleshed out. Aside from Michael and Eleanor, I think I struggle with the other characters. If they've got some high concept ideas, it works, but occasionally I have found some of the episodes quite dull. So inconsistent for me, but a strong start and a strong last 2 episodes.
I definitely think they've ended it at the right time, and I think the issue is, I think as Matt says, the first series has such a strong twist and a strong way of doing it that I think it was hard. There's that kind of reminder for me about how Prison Break went. And I know it's a completely different series, but as soon as you started moving away from the prison and the break in Prison Break, it wasn't quite as good. And I think the further they got away from the big twist of The Good Place wasn't The Good Place, then, I think the show really had to rediscover itself a number of times and probably overstepped its mark in the middle around Series 3, where it tried to reinvent, this whole idea where they were reinventing the bad place, and then, they were visiting Earth. But as I say, as a whole, I think they've ended it in such a way that it will get looked back on more as favourably as it should be.